Hello. Okay, James. Alors, pardon. Sorry for two things to say in French before we switch to English. Okay. Well, you speak French. Spoke.
No, I don't. I try.
Um,
Try and I fail.
Yep. Okay.
I have this very cool jacket. I have this cool jacket, but I can't button it and unbutton it. It's very sad.
Alors, contrairement à ce qu'on vous avait demandé de faire pendant la projection, à partir de maintenant, si vous voulez sortir vos appareils photo ou vos petites caméras, vous êtes les bienvenus. Deuxièmement, quand vous aurez une question à poser, soyez assez gentil de nous faire un signe, de façon surtout à ce que les hôtesses qui sont équipées de micros et qui sont tout à fait en bout de salle puissent arriver jusqu'à vous. Et vous passez le micro, comme ça on perdra le moins de temps possible. D'avance, merci. Logistics.
I understood.
Okay.
There are the doors. I got it.
Not yet. Venice. Most of the reviewers who were in Venice immediately, unanimously went, it's Apocalypse Now, the space opera. And some threw in the book that Apocalypse Now is based on, which is Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Do you agree? Do you not agree?
It is, but it's not. I mean, if you were to watch Apocalypse Now with Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces right next to you, you would find that that movie follows the Campbell blueprint almost 100%. In other words, there's a kind of a basic storyline, which is really, in this case, it was me trying to do Telemachus' side of the story in the Odyssey. But then it winds up being Apocalypse Now because, you know, you rip off the people you love. You're inspired by the people you love. So, yeah, it's Apocalypse Now, but it's not. He doesn't, you know, he's going after his actual father in this, which is a whole other set of circumstances psychologically and emotionally that a mythic sort of symbolic father isn't. So yeah, it's true, but it's not.
Okay. I read in the Hollywood Reporter that you've been sort of thinking of making that kind of a movie, or that movie in particular, based on two articles that you had read in 2011.
Oh yeah, I had read two different things. One thing was an article about the Mars mission that is going to be undertaken in 2033. That's when we have a chance to get to Mars because, you know, the planets orbit not in perfect circles, and it's when Mars is as close as it'll ever be to the Earth. So that's our window. And I had read a thing which said that basically 4 people are going to be in a space which is, oh my God, considerably smaller than this, maybe even a quarter of the size of this space, for a year and a half. And they're going to have to find people who suffer from what they call, or have, I shouldn't say suffer from, but have schizoid personality and kind of what you might call on the spectrum, almost a kind of Asperger, and emotionally very shut down. I thought, well, that's interesting. You know, the very qualities that are going to be demanded to take this trip to Mars to be able to tolerate it are exactly the wrong people to talk about it on some kind of spiritual level, psychologically complex level. You know, it's like when you see Neil Armstrong in his first press conference along with Buzz Aldrin after they were released from quarantine, and they asked him, well, what it meant to see the Earth as this tiny blue dot. And he said, the left thruster on the lunar module had 6 cubic liters of oxygen fuel. You know what I mean? He talked totally as an engineer. Now, I'm not bad-mouthing Neil Armstrong. He's maybe the greatest thing any human's ever done. But he wasn't equipped to talk in any kind of terms that we might think are emotional or metaphysical. He just talked about the technical. So I had read that and I thought, well, that's interesting. And then, you know, as I often do, I sort of wrote down some ideas and I circled it, I cut it out and I put it in a file. And then around the same time, I know this is thrilling, I had read something about Enrico Fermi when he was first talking to the other scientists and they were going to conduct the first nuclear explosion test in New Mexico. And he said to them, well, there's a 90% chance that the entire southwestern part of the United States won't be destroyed. Should we do this? I thought, they did the experiment, thank God it didn't happen, but there's a 10% chance that the entire Southwest would be destroyed, and they did it anyway. And so I thought, well, what happens if a guy is in deep space, they think he's doing something, and then the two ideas sort of collided, and that's what became the movie, really.
Now, the movie is a new genre for you, accepted totally. But as film goers, we obviously go back, at least at the beginning, to 2001 Space Odyssey.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a bit frustrating because you can't really do anything that Mr. Kubrick did not already do. And I realized, especially, I was in trouble with music. Because you can't put classical music up against picture, then they go, oh, that's 2001. And I couldn't put electronic music up there because somebody said, oh, it's Clockwork Orange or something, you know, or Blade Runner, Vangelis. And I couldn't really put traditional score because then it would seem like kind of hackneyed. So then I thought, well, the first piece of music I put up against picture worked so wonderfully well, and I knew that people would say it ripped off Kubrick, so I couldn't use it. And I realized I'm kind of in a bind here. But yeah, everyone owes a debt to Kubrick because, you know, he did a science fiction movie that became almost like science future fact in some ways, and he had such a unique and wonderful understanding of human behavior. You know, it's funny when we're talking about 2001. Obviously, I love 2001. You might want to get that. In 2001, he's got all this stuff that's totally awesome and wow, inspiring, awe-inspiring, and incredible. You just sit there, you go, wow. But you know what I think is kind of the best thing in 2001? Well, maybe not the best thing, but one of the best things is he's got these, I don't know how well you guys remember the movie, but he's got these astronauts that go to look at the monolith on the moon. They've dug it out, and there's a kind of area that the monolith sits in, and they're walking down, looking at the monolith, and you have this liggity music, like this. It seems very serious, and you're looking at this black slab, this minimalist 60s sculpture. And then the guy says to the other astronaut, or he motions to the other astronauts to get a picture. It's such a perfect understanding of human behavior. They're faced with a version of God. Let's get a Kodak moment. And you realize that what matters, and also with Hal, what matters is the details of human behavior, not really the visual effects. So everyone owes a debt to him. Now, having said that, I tried to do the opposite, because the Kubrick film, he beats the trap brilliantly, but he basically says, there are aliens. Now, in most movies, they're before that, they were depicted as, you know, like little green men, or you see The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is a great movie, but it's the Klaatu Barara Niktu, it's this tall metal guy. By the way, do you know the story behind that guy? He was the usher at the Mann Chinese Theater in Los Angeles. Then it was Grauman's Chinese Theater. Maybe it's Grauman's again. The Grauman's Chinese Theater, and he was almost 7 feet tall, but he was very skinny, and he could not lift the woman that he was supposed to lift, so they had all these body... Anyway, I'm boring you with movie trivia. But in any event, Kubrick beats the trap about aliens because it's a black monolith, and you can project anything you want onto it, right? Are they good aliens? Are they bad aliens? I don't know. It's just they're aliens. You don't really see them. There's a human zoo. It's very mysterious. But for me, it presented a philosophical problem, if I can sound pretentious for a second, because I couldn't figure out, even if it's good aliens or bad aliens, it's still a kind of false gods scenario. And I don't believe in that. I'm not bad-mouthing 2001, by the way. It's one of my favorite movies ever. But I'm saying that he beat this trap by having it be so mysterious. Because there are no aliens that are going to come and bail us out of our problems. And there's no aliens that are going to come try and wipe us out. And we all have to team up to fight the bad aliens. That's not going to bail us out. You know, this is what we got. This is where we live. We have each other. And that's kind of it. So I said, I'm going to try and do the first movie that says, oh, there's nothing out there. So I thought, oh, great, I have Tommy Lee Jones say, there's nothing, no life elsewhere. And that was the kind of the springboard for the whole thing. I'm talking too much, aren't I?
No, not good.
I don't get out enough.
In generally speaking, are you into space films?
No, I hate them.
Not.
No, I
don't know, Star Wars or E.T., whatever.
That's an amazing movie, but here's the thing about him. He beats the trap because the movies play like fables. I mean, I don't think you watch E.T. and you say, how accurate is that a representation of what might be an alien? I mean, that's not the point of the movie. The movie's about that kid's loneliness and about his parents' divorce, and it's a metaphor, really. So the film is beautiful. But Star Wars, I never considered even science fiction. I consider that fantasy. I like Empire Strikes Back a lot. I think that's a beautiful film. But I was, as a kid, I have to confess, Star Wars was not my thing. I don't know, I remember like Wookiees and X-Wing fighters and all my classmates, they thought it was the greatest thing ever. I was a Jaws guy. I liked the angry shark killing everybody. And then I was an Apocalypse Now guy. I kind of skipped the Star Wars moment, you know. It just seemed, for kids, even though I was 8, I don't know what the fuck I thought should be watching, you know, but I definitely, and the thing about space movies, usually, like I say, they philosophical cop-outs, in my view, or they just seem cheesy.
Well, they're generally very positive, very optimistic, generally. Yours is not.
I don't think.
Not.
Well, I don't think the film is negative. I mean, at least
I didn't say it was negative.
No, I know, but what I was trying to do, and maybe I failed at this, but what I was trying to do was to say the Earth is what matters. Human beings are what matter. You can think you want to be alone. You know, it's okay. I want to be by myself. I want to just have dinner by myself. I want to go to the movies. I like going to the movies by myself. I hear people say that to me all the time. I say, yeah, that's fine. But if you're made to be alone, that's quite a different issue. And if you do any research about solitary confinement, it's the worst punishment a human being can endure. You know, you apparently start hearing voices over and over again. You start going through your whole life on a kind of endless, and it leads to madness very quickly. If you're in solitary confinement for 30 days, it causes serious and permanent mental damage. So I found that was kind of a darkness, but that if the guy returns, well, that's not too bad. He's with other people. So I thought that was positive. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Now, what was the mindset that drove you to cast Brad Pitt as the astronaut?
In order to make a film where you're trying to establish this idea of the stereotype of masculinity and say that is bullshit, that this idea like, your pulse rate never goes above 80. You're awesome, man. You just can handle anything. You're a man's man. And to say, well, you know what? That's kind of like toxic. That's kind of a problem because he can't confront anything emotionally and hasn't. He's been in denial for 30 years or whatever. But in order to tear that down, you need to start somewhere. You need to start with the myth in order to destroy it. And he wanted to do it. So I thought that was a good idea because you can't really get more archetypally American male than Brad. See, if I cast, you know, I don't know, Wallace Shawn as the astronaut, there's nothing, Wallace Shawn's a terrific actor, but you know what I'm saying? There's nothing to tear down in the myth. You know, can you imagine that? I'm here for a spacewalk. You know what I mean? There's nothing to tear down. So with Pitt, you have a kind of almost an archetype. That was the motive behind it anyway.
Now, there are two other characters in the film, those who are crucial, although they're limited in terms of time, and that's Donald Sutherland and Ruth Negga. Donald Sutherland knew Roy as a kid. He knew he was a friend of the father, and he says the last time we spoke, it didn't go well.
Right.
Ruth Negga never lived on Earth. Her parents were murdered by the father, Roy's father. So we're back to the father figure, which is almost a constant, at least a frequent aspect of your work. It was Maximilian Schell in Little Odessa. It was James Caan in The Yard. It was Robert Duvall. And this time is Tommy Lee Jones. I was tempted to say Colonel Kurtz, but you got that one down. Why the recurrence to the father figure?
He's just about the first person you meet in your life, him or your mom. It's a very elemental relationship. It governs and dictates so much of our unconscious. Governs is the wrong word, but it's such a part of our unconscious, and then our conscious as well. Our parents are like gods to us when we're children. I mean, it's the only thing that we know, and what they say is so essential to us. What they teach us and don't teach us is essential. And in some respects, what I'm trying to do is to get rid of the fluff, the flab, to try and get it as elemental as I can. Fathers and sons, mothers and sons, mothers and daughters, fathers and daughters. And to try and get at the core of what it means to be a person. Now, that's not easy